Hello, hello. Hope everyone's having a great day and enjoying the convention. My name's Josh. I'm the CEO of Labrys. We're a software development agency. As I like to outline and simplify, our purpose is to help build ideas and visions. And particularly our expertise is software development and particularly blockchain, which is obviously why we're here. So what I want to talk about today is how to build, and particularly how to build to an MVP. So if no one is familiar of the concept of an MVP, it's a minimum viable product. So it's the minimum thing your idea or project has to achieve to be deliverable to the market. And the way I like to always describe it to anyone that's unfamiliar with the concept is an example. And that example is if someone comes to me and says, I want a car, the first thing I'm going to ask them is, why do you need me to build you a car? And their answer should be something along the lines of, I just need to get to A to B and I don't want to walk. So I will disappear and I will invent them a skateboard. They won't get a car, but they'll look at me probably and say, well, I'm not going in a straight line. I need to be able to steer. So I'll give them handlebars and now they've got a scooter. And it turns out all they needed was a scooter the whole time. You know, they don't need a car. They don't need the thousands of man hours to get engineering involved. They just need to understand and realize what exactly they actually need to get the job done instead. And a quick thing that I always like to explore with everyone, especially in this space, is quite an important one, is why use blockchain as well. It's quite a thing that is important to think about, because at the end of the day, it's very easy to over-engineer and overthink how that solution can help the architecture of your system. And one of the things I actually always do whenever interviewing people at Labrys is I ask the question, how do you explain blockchain to someone who doesn't know it? And the way I actually normally like to answer the question is, it's just a trustless database. You know, at the end of the day, it's a database with a bit of logic to come in and out, and it becomes very easy to immediately architect around that. So ensuring that you have a firm grasp and understanding of what blockchain is, so you're not forcing your product into that niche in the wrong way, is incredibly valuable. So let's talk about how to get to the MVP stage and how to formulate, because the first thing you have to do is plan for it. And it will be the most critical, important thing that you can do that will honestly save money to get your product to market. And the first thing is obviously outlining your use case, establishing your vision, establishing what it looks like to be or have success in the delivery of your product or your project. So don't plan how to get there, just plan what the end goal will look like. How to get there is the responsibility of the people that are going to build the product with you. So to do this, you need to obviously set goals. So, you know, how am I solving this use case? What does that look like? Make sure that they're reasonable, make sure that they're concise. And generally speaking, if that's difficult, find someone to workshop with, find an expert in the space to plan and ideate the concept. And then you can get to what I suggested before with the metaphor of MVP, where you can start to nail down what are the criteria points that I need to establish and nail to get to market, and to ensure that you're not over-analyzing it and complicating your product in general. Now, with blockchain specifically, often I have to suggest to people that possibly an MVP is actually not the first place to start. And it is quite rare, but when we're working in a space that is full of innovation and full of ideas that maybe have not even been attempted yet, sometimes it's okay to slow right down and basically build a proof of concept. And that is essentially not a marketable product. You're not going to ship that out to anyone, but you're trying to prove the thing that I'm about to do is actually the thing that I want to do, right? Spending the minimum cost to stick something together and obviously help you then therefore establish those criteria points that I mentioned before. Now, once you've kind of got your plan there, it's time to start to build, right? And this will be the important thing, to find the right people that can help essentially build that pathway between start to finish. And here's where you need to make sure it is in your best interest to test those people. Can they understand your vision? Can they generate a plan for you before they start building? Because when you sit down with your SMEs, your subject matter experts, you'll find that they can be tested very well and come up with great creative solutions that will at the end save cost. I used the metaphor before around MVP, around the people that ask for a car may not actually need a car. Sometimes something like a scooter will suffice. The metaphor I like to use to bridge this one is sometimes actually you only need a bus ticket. Maybe you didn't actually need to have anything invented at all. So sometimes you need to get the creative minds, your subject matter experts, to help you establish exactly what's going on there. And then obviously with that vision in sight, they should be able to have an iteration plan. So being able to establish the concept, if I have my skateboard in front of me, what do I need next? I have my scooter here, we're ready for market. No, turns out that it's a bit too slow. Okay, let's put some pedals on it. Now it's a bicycle, right? So taking your plan in iterative steps will help you get to the spot you need in the best way. The next thing to do is to ensure that you have a test to market. So what I mean by that is it's very, very easy to get caught up in watching your product be built, to come to fruition. And it's very, very easy as the owner to start to get nitpicky and kind of address and raise the standard a bit too high. And the easiest way to counteract that is to find and test users in your market and put it in their hands. Because a lot of the times they'll actually be okay with it. And it is a never-ending battle sometimes when you skip this step, because it turns out when you're working with something that you've built, your standards are far, far higher than what you normally would have. The countless times I've had to discuss with people and give them an example of an application that they use, and it turns out that they're willing to compromise on a lot just to get the product that they want to use. So that's pretty much one of the most important parts once you've kind of got your product being built. And the final thing is as I suggested before, leveraging existing frameworks in the process. So I just established the example metaphor of provide a bus ticket. Turns out you didn't really need to build much at all. You just needed to have a service. That's what you're basically doing. You're building a service to deliver an existing product to everyone. So I suppose with that, we've kind of taken a little bit of discussion about MVPs and the likes. Does anyone have any questions or anything that I want to ask? No? Cool. Well, so yeah, so do we have another mic? Otherwise it's going to be pretty hard to speak. That's fine.
Did you hear my question? No worries, man. So basically, say you build the MVP and everything like that, a brilliant product, could be, whatever use case. What do you suggest and your advice specifically on onboarding existing businesses from, say, their existing systems, whether it's enterprise and that sort of stuff, into what you've built? Do you have a specific framework? Do you recommend anything, or like an educative onboarding process and that sort of stuff? Like, you've built a lot of stuff, so I just want to hear your expertise on that one.
Yeah, absolutely. So the answer to that one is it does actually kind of depend on what the market that you're leaning into. But early on, I've seen a lot more success when it comes to just effort at the end. So sometimes it's actually just easier to literally focus down on what you have over your competitors if you're trying to move into an existing space, what your specific niche is, and then honestly just put manpower in it, in showing them, you know, let's put people in front of you to ensure where your staff are trained. You know, we've got a transition plan in place and just putting manpower in there. I've been a part of companies that have tried to automate and make it very, very easy, like creating knowledge bases and even courses for large complex software products. And those things, you sink so much money into it to find out that it's actually not really that useful, and the best thing to do was just to have literally someone there on site training someone on how to do something in there, and then focus primarily on what the benefit of them using that product is over their, you know, their day-to-day, if that answers your question. Excellent. Any other questions? So you want to throw the question to the public?
What do you think about building a prototype, you know, with these no-code things, just cobbling it together and then getting other people to build your actual application back-end?
Sorry, say that again.
Like you build a prototype with the no-code things, you know, you throw it together, make it work roughly, and then you get someone to build the back-end. How do you go about getting them to execute what you're trying to do?
Yeah, okay. No, interesting question there. So, depending on the complexities of it, you really got to focus on planning in that aspect. So, depending on your expertise in that situation, sorry, I got to think about it. What I would generally suggest, especially if the reason you're choosing a no-code solution is because you're possibly not technical in that aspect, doing a planning session with someone that is technical will pay dividends, because you'll know what you have to deliver, essentially in somewhat of a handover to get someone else involved. Now, you also then get that opportunity to plan for iteration, as I said, depending on what your pathway looks like. You might be fine with get to market and we'll rebuild everything from the ground up, or you might be trying to salvage as much cost initially as possible, but really it just evolves around planning, finding that SME, going, okay, well, here's my vision, what do you need if this is exactly the thing that you're going to do? They should be able to establish that, and then essentially it's up to you to provide that and get your SME in place to do it. You definitely don't need to overcomplicate it there. No-code solutions are very good for a lot of use cases. Probably the one caveat there I'd throw in there is, unless you talk to someone like an SME about it, you might end up doing something that's not fit for purpose and essentially just burning the whole time, if that answers your question. Perfect. Anyone else? No, cool. Oh, yeah, another one. I think we've got a microphone coming around. Oh, shit.
Hey man, so in relation to MVP, obviously you're an SME. What do you suggest for the general audience for basically a planning session to determine like use cases for this technology and that sort of stuff, rollout plan, implementation, and basically identifying blockchain use cases for across the spectrum for someone's business in particular?
Yeah, so
like a bit of a framework or something that you guys use, or like, you know?
Yeah, so my background is project management, so I have to throw that in there because I love frameworks at the end of the day. But I generally have a philosophy that I push downwards that I don't like to generally stick to one. It's the same concept, and it's a bit of a tangential metaphor that I got asked today about how do I communicate with people. And, you know, someone might suggest, oh, do you communicate with people weekly? And the answer is no, I communicate with people when I need to communicate with people. It's important to be able to pivot. But to actually answer your question, the answer is it depends. But generally what we always suggest is if you're sitting there and you say, well, I have an idea, I just don't know where to go from here, which I think is more or less kind of your question, is about where do I go forward. jumping on a call with someone that does understand the different frameworks and they can pivot you in. Like we offer like quick initial consultations as an example, where we just kind of go, okay, like where are you? Where are you at with your idea? Do you need to sit there and formulate? Is your idea already very, very strong and you know exactly how to use the technology? In which case, okay, we need to put a product person in front of you and help you basically get that idea to a vision. But if you're at the idea stage, there's a reason why we have people like that we just jump on a call with, and more or less we kind of find out exactly where you're in the idea just to get you to that vision. Because once you've got the vision, you just got to put the people in place to build it.
So where would you even start working on a blockchain platform from? Like say from a development perspective, like what tools would you use? You know, that kind of thing.
Great question. It's actually a topic that comes up in our company often, obviously, as we've had to start becoming pretty good at training people in blockchain. So my opinion of this is not to dive straight in without a strong foundation. So if I go back to the importance of understanding what blockchain is on an architectural standpoint for a system design, as I said, it's really just a trustless database with some logic on top. Ensuring that you're capable of doing those things without blockchain. So are you familiar with databasing and how that works? Are you familiar with logical layers and endpoints and APIs? Do you understand basic levels of security and permissions? If you understand that, and depending on which language you want, let's say as an example, you want to be a Solidity developer, so you want to develop on EVM platforms. Learning TypeScript, you can hop that gap and basically be a Solidity developer pretty quick. You just need to learn the nuances of it. So a strong foundation is incredibly important. We've gone through teaching phases with people that haven't had a strong foundation of understanding how databases and APIs and security works, and the products that we end up with fall quite flat. So we basically more or less categorize people as like the 2.5 is what we generally refer to it as. So you understand how like these things work, and okay, now you can more or less go through the training course of the language itself to work with blockchain. Perfect. Final questions?
Do you have any frameworks for managing technical debt in that transition from POC to MVP and beyond? And maybe just like an overview on how you view technical debt for anybody that may not be familiar?
Yeah, nice. Actually, that's a very, very good question. So the important thing is, in my opinion and my philosophy around debt, is it is important that you don't dive into it yourself if you're the product owner or the product manager or anyone in that position. The people that need to initially manage debt are the developers themselves, the people working and building on the product. Because it's very, very, very hard to not look at all debt and say, I need to fix this. Like, I don't want, it's countless times that you're like, I don't want debt in my product. Like, why do we have debt? Right? Debt is there for a reason, and it's very, very good to build in some cases. So the first thing is making sure that the people building are the ones ensuring that they understand that they created debt, that it's tracked. I mean, there's tools and utilities, depending on what you're doing, that they can track that they should already know. And they will be able to flag preemptively what the cause of fixing that will be, what is the effort, what is the time, and the priority of it based on the vision that you have created. So if you've already know what the POC looks like, you already know what the MVP looks like, you may even potentially know what is going to look like after the first phase, after launch, these technical employees or these SMEs should be able to very much understand which one is going to be high priority and when. So I'm a very big fan of letting the SMEs drive that, because as I said, you can get lost in technical debt and want to fix way too much. And the reality is that the best products that have ever, or I've at least been a part of building, have more technical debt than you would ever realize, but doesn't matter. If no one knows, does it really matter? Probably not, depending on where you're going with it. Any others? Cool, all right. Well, if you haven't come around, we do have a booth over near the front. Feel free to come say hi. We've got people down there, and if you've got any other questions, we'll be more than happy to answer you at the booth. But otherwise, thank you for your time, and hopefully you're enjoying the convention and have a great weekend.